Very good morning to you.
Hello again.
It's a public holiday here in France, meaning that the postal service seems to be a bit slow. No French newspapers in paper right now, but we do know what's inside of them. We have got the front pages.
And we can show you what's inside of them through the magic of technology. So starting with Libération today, their front page is quite eye-catching. They've got the former minister Luc Ferry with the caption "Dirty Ferry." Now, this is because he told a live TV studio audience that he knew a former French government minister, had been arrested in Marrakech some years ago for paedophilia, having been involved in an orgy with some young boys. Now, the way this paper has treated this story is quite typically French in that they don't investigate or go into the question of who the minister he's accusing might be, but they do attack Ferry for having dragged up what they call gutter gossip. But they do make a fair point. They say that if he's got the evidence that he says that he has, that a certain former minister was involved in paedophilia, then it's a very serious crime and he should go to the police. They ask, why hasn't he?
It's a serious story, strangely enough, really, kind of covered in a funny way there with that front page with that Dirty Ferry headline. Anyway, let's move on to one of possibly the political scandal that was at the source of what you're calling maybe a change in political reporting here in France. That's the DSK scandal, as it's called here. Dominique Strauss-Kahn still in New York, waiting for that court case to continue there, and that has changed society for good, says. Who is it? Le Parisien.
Yes,
Newspaper.
Indeed. We've talked a lot on France 24 about how the Strauss-Kahn case has been a big shock in France, both politically and in terms of gender roles, in terms of getting the French to have a look again about how men and women relate to each other. And according to Le Parisien front page, it's changed the relationship between men and women here forever. Both Strauss-Kahn and, of course, the Georges Tron scandal, a minister recently forced to resign over sexual harassment allegations. They talked to a domestic violence helpline, Le Parisien, and the people working there said they've had 4 times as many complaints of sexual harassments since Strauss-Kahn was arrested as they did before. So 4 times as many women, the paper says, feel that they are now able to complain about their accuser, which is interesting, although there is a cartoon in the same paper where the cartoonist doesn't seem to have really got the same message as the journalist about the roles of men and women in French society at the moment. It shows a man who's asking a woman, "So are you my new colleague?" And she's saying, "You have the right to remain silent." So it seems a little bit like the cartoonist is implying that men should be worried now because even talking to a woman in your workplace could get you arrested rather. So the cartoonist seems to be showing that some attitudes in the French press aren't changing quite as quickly as one might wish.
Big discussions here, not only in the French press, but in French society, really, as well, about how women are treated in the workplace, really. Now, a pretty shocking story, really, on the front page of that same newspaper there of Le Parisien. Yes. It's called here in Paris, Aujourd'hui en France, and the rest of France. Let's take a look at that.
Yes, this is in Seine-Saint-Denis, which is a suburb only just outside of Paris, only a few miles from here, where apparently 600 pupils were forced to stay in school, be locked in their classrooms during their break times because of shootings going on in the street outside. And this apparently has happened dozens of times in this suburb, where there's quite a large problem with armed drug gangs shooting at one another. A number of the 10-year-olds who are quoted in the piece as saying they've seen shootings happen in the street before. Now, this is quite a large problem, which we don't normally hear a huge amount about in the national French papers, but the Le Parisien interviews the mayor of Sévran, which is where this school is. He says tough drug laws and a huge police presence in the area haven't really helped. He wants policies to help get more young men into work so they're not hanging around on the streets, and also the legalisation of cannabis, because he says police are wasting too much time chasing after soft drug users.
Right, that's in Aujourd'hui en France. Let's move on to our last newspaper. That's the main conservative paper here, Le Figaro. And Elena, they are looking at the effect of French immigration policy on Africa.
Yes, according to Le Figaro today, there are 1 million African university professors teaching in Europe, and there are more doctors trained in Burkina Faso practicing in the French countryside than there are in their own country. Now, this is partly, the paper says, due to a targeted French immigration policy, which is trying to encourage qualified immigrants. So they set quotas for certain professions and then hope to fill them by bringing a certain amount of doctors and nurses and so on from Africa. But this is disastrous from the countries that they're coming from, who find themselves desperately short of professionals who are rightly qualified. Now, there's some good news in the piece. They do say that postgraduate students especially are starting to come back from Europe to Africa as more money is being invested in universities there and so on. But it's still a tough problem for African countries to deal with.
Africa fighting against the brain drain, that is,
yes.
Isn't it? All right, thank you very much. That's the French press review with Elena Casas. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Now, let's get a reminder of the main headlines and the main